every goal and try. Since '85 we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with each toe grip we fight. Now we stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with each toe grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Robin Pod Weekly. After a season of great passion and unforgettable moments, Hull Kingston Rovers stand on the brink of history. A superb performance in the playoff semi-final saw the Robins overcome St Helens, and now just one final challenge awaits. The Super League Grand Final at Old Trafford, where Hull KR will look to complete an incredible treble, while Wigan Warriors aim to lift the title for the third consecutive season. Off the field, there's more recognition for the man leading the charge. Willie Peters named assistant coach for Australia ahead of the Ashes series against England, and crowned Super League head coach of the year for his second season in a row. We'll be discussing all of that and more, answering your questions during question time and hearing from Steve Till in the final Robins Revisited of the season, as we look back and look forward to what promises to be a defining night in the club's proud history. This is the Robin Pod Weekly, your home for all Hull Kingston Rovers discussion and your countdown to the Super League Grand Final. Joining me to help preview that game and look back at that victory over St Helens and discuss all the other talking points emanating from HU9 is Graham Turner. Welcome back to the Robin Pod, Graham.
Thanks, John. Good to be here in this build-up to the big dance.
Well, it is the big dance, isn't it? That's what it's been labelled as. Many people watching and listening to the Robin Pod will have seen the NRL Grand Final, which took place on Sunday, which was another really exciting tie. Interestingly, it's been confirmed that the World Club Challenge will be taking place in 2026. So, of course, the champions, the winners of the NRL will be coming to England, possibly, or hosting a side in Australia when the World Cup Challenge takes place. And of course, we're hoping, Graham, it's going to be Hull Kingston Rovers who gets to play in that fixture.
Yeah, massive opportunity as well, just to put again ourselves on that global stage of World Cup Challenge. I think we've got a small matter of Saturday to get over before we start getting excited by any of that, Jono. But yeah, should the result on Saturday go away, then again a fantastic opportunity to expose the club in the right way. Yeah,
and I'm sure Paul Lakin's not in Willie Peters' ears saying make sure you do it, because if it opens up more doors, but they'll be acutely aware of the potential for victory. Not only does it open up doors potentially in the future, but we are going for a treble, which is, actually, Graham, I think when I've been thinking about it, it's almost been forgot about that. It's almost like, right, we've won the Challenge Cup, we've won the League Leaders Shield, right, it's Grand Final next. And it's like, roll back last season, a couple of seasons, to even been having these discussions would have been, well, we wouldn't have been expecting, would we? I know the team, the club have been building to this, but to be sat here now talking to you about the chance to win a treble in 2025 is absolutely incredible. And I do think we need to take stock as a supporter base just to enjoy the moment, but also just realise how far we have come.
Yeah, and in such a short period of time as well, that we've all seen those building blocks over the last 3 years. But if you sort of stretch that period back to circa 10 years, when many of us remember that fateful day of relegation back to the Championship, that in a club's lifespan is not a huge amount of time, 10 years. But you look at where we were to where we are now. And in the last 3 seasons of Willie's tenure, 4 of the last 6 finals that we've available to compete for, we've been there. We've been at that opportunity. Come away with silverware 2 occasions this season, and yeah, I think the opportunity of that historic treble. Wigan were quite rightly lauded last year for being the best side in the comp and making an absolute clean sweep. And I think this is an opportunity for us to put our stamp on the competition this year, if it's not enough already, to win those 2, to be taken as a serious contender. And then the next challenge after that is being able to build on that season on season, like the Wigan, Saints, Leeds have done historically, so that we can build that sort of long-term dynasty of success, and not just be hopefully not a 1-season wonder. But the last 3 years definitely have seen that improvement, and as competing at that top table and finally getting ourselves over the line with those silverware, with the silverware that we were absolutely craving for so long for many of us. And yeah, it's completely alien, I think, to some of us to have this period of success, albeit the last 2 or 3 seasons we've seen it coming. But now we've got to learn to enjoy it and embrace it. And the new members to the supporter base, this is all they've ever known in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's like a real weird dynamic for those that have been here long enough to experience some of those significant lows, to now understand how we should act and react when we get these highs. And this is why, like you say, reflecting on it, we've got to enjoy these moments.
Yeah. And I mentioned it on last week's Robin Pod, Graham. This is now the 11th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th either semi-final or final we've played in since 2021. So actually, we're not the plucky underdogs anymore. There is an area of expectation. And we'll come on to that as we build up to the game against Wigan later on in the Robin Pod. Let's look at how we got there, which of course was a 20 points to 12 victory over St Helens at a windswept Craven Park. When is it ever not? But it was a funny old game, Graham. But at no point I felt was the game or the result, in question. Although Saints did threaten us, especially after that second half, after the half-time interval, they did threaten us. But I didn't really feel like they had enough to get in front, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that first half was nigh on perfect from us in terms of controlling the game. And you look at where the game was played, the vast majority of it for us stood in the East Stand was we were looking right all the way, all the time at the Saints line. We sort of counted literally on the fingers of one hand how many times they were threatening our line in that first half. And that took a lot of effort and composure to do that. And then you could argue that paid dividends in the second half. But like you, there was that period in the first 5 minutes where you knew Saints were going to come out firing, and we weren't quite at it. And there was a few mistakes, a couple of errors, they got the score. And you then sort of thinking, oh, okay, what if? But like you, again, I was completely confident and in how we were going and how the game was being controlled and managed. And I think once we'd weathered that period of excitement that Saints created, I think once we were able to get back and get composed again, we were able to turn that screw and see the game off relatively comfortably, albeit there was a last minute opportunity that brought the score a bit closer. But I don't think it was ever going to be one of those where it was one of those last minute heartbreaks that we were going to endure. I thought we were always in control of that game, and we earned the right to be in control of that with that first half performance.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that first half, Graham, it just shows you the game plan that Willie Peters is trying to execute, doesn't it? It was a perfect example of how we want to turn the opposition round. We want to play in their half. We want to make sure that they're absolutely starved of possession in the Robins half. The worry for me, and which was highlighted after half-time, was that if we don't take our chances and it's a low-scoring game, we seem to still be conceding some soft tries, which ultimately, when Saints scored that try after half-time and it was 12-6, if they scored another one, it's 12-12, then all of a sudden the game plan sort of changed. And I understand what they're doing, and I like it in terms of strangling the opposition of possession in really key areas for them. But if we're not then scoring points on the back of it, we've got to literally play that game for 80 minutes And that's probably where, over the performances towards the back end of the season, a few supporters may be just questioning whether we can do it. But there's no doubt the blueprint is set. And when we do it so effectively that no side can live with it. And that's what I really hope on Saturday we see. Not just a 40-minute performance in terms of delivering that game plan. We see it for the 80 minutes, because if we do, I think that's big enough and good enough to beat Wigan.
Yeah, 100%. I think we could do that if we put in that type of 40 minutes into 80 minutes. Absolutely. And I think we've spoken about this before, about that last block of games in the regular season whereby we were conceding 20-something points against 𝗀𝗂𝗃, we conceded 20-something against Leeds, and we weren't our usual dominant self in that back end of the season. Was that fatigue? What was it, lack of concentration? What was it? We don't know. But I think we saw certainly in that first half, the traits that had got us to where we were in the regular season, that dominant performance of being in control of where we turned the ball over, and predominantly it was within their 10-metre zone in a corner. We can then set up and defend accordingly from that. So I think that side of it, if we can start like that, potentially get on the front foot, dominating like that, Wigan, we all know that they've got some threats in there, but if we can nullify those with having to make them work from really deep lots of the time, and then if we can execute our attack a little bit better than I think we did on Saturday, I thought that was, we left a few opportunities out there on the field that should have been taken. But notwithstanding that, if we can take our chances when they're presented, and you only have to go back 12 months to last year's grand final, I thought there were probably 2 or 3 opportunities where we had a chance, but we didn't execute any of them in that moment. So, I think everybody's predicting a tight game, a matter of, inches either way. Those moments of brilliance, that opportunity, we have to be ready to take those when they present themselves. And again, to earn the right to present themselves, we have to work hard and start like we did in that first 40 against Saints.
Yeah, and we took full advantage of the sin binning in the first half, didn't we? Some people questioning whether it was worthy of a sin binning, but there's no doubt, wasn't there, that Wellesby's interference did influence Litton's ability to then get on the end of his own kick. And there's no doubt if he did get on the end of that kick, he would have probably gone in or at least created tries. So, you can understand why the referee awarded a yellow card to Wellesby for that. And then, of course, we took full advantage with the penalty from Morg and then the try that we saw 𝗬𝗲 scoring on his return. And we've seen what a potent finisher he is. That 𝗀𝗽𝗲 partnership then came alive for the next try in the first half. 𝗀𝗽𝗲, probably 𝗀𝗽𝗲's best game for, this season. I definitely think don't forget, it's been an injury-ravaged season for him in terms of the amount of games he's missed, and we'd like to have seen him playing much more games, of course. And we mentioned last week on the Robin Pod about how Willie Peters has a sort of his 13, and there's no doubt that 𝗀𝗽𝗲. And he's now coming to the fore in terms of his form. He looks fit. He looks fully fit. He looks like he's got so much to give in terms of his offloads. Of course, the tries he scored against St Helens, I think that was 𝗀𝗽𝗲 at his best. And I think people forget how young he is. He's not an old player, is he? He's still... I think people forget about when he went to the NRL and he didn't really feature much for them. People forgot about him, and now he's back. So, yeah, it was great to see him playing really well. 12-0 at half-time, Graham. Obviously, we've talked about the game plan, how effective it was. We're probably naively, in my opinion, expecting a bit of a procession come the second half because we'd laid such a platform. The old saying is never write off the Saints. We saw that against Leeds, didn't we, about ultimately how they got to that semi-final appearance. And although Saints, yes, did trouble us for the first 15 minutes of the second half, ultimately the Robins came to the fore again, saw the game out, and really won the game at a canter.
Yeah, I think that going in 12-0, only 12-0 down for Saints, that was probably a boost for them to say, look, we're only 2. So you almost should expect that they come out after half-time absolutely ripping in and trying everything they can to get back in the game, because as soon as they get one score and create it to a one-score game, then anything can happen after that. It creates seeds of doubt, etc. And if they were able to continue that. But like you say, after that initial period of that 10 minutes, I thought we got the stranglehold back in the game. I thought it was interesting that 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗴𝗏 went off, and we seemed to.
Well, I was just about to. Yeah, I was going to.
Yeah, we sort of looked a bit raggy there. We made a few errors. We made a few decisions that didn't seem quite normal. We didn't seem to be organised enough. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏 comes back on, and we look a slightly different team again.
Graham, do you think, right, because I was looking at that and I was studying the well. So when he came off, so normally when a player of someone like 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏 and Lewis at the moment, they come off, it's down to an injury. He didn't. He came and sat down on the bench. Normally then you'd think, oh, the physio's coming over just to check. It didn't happen. And I wondered if that was more a tactical decision, whether they thought the game was at a point where we had them not beat, but we had them at arm's length kind of thing. Because ultimately, like you said, he came back on and he showed no ill effects of looking like he was injured. So it looked like more of a tactical decision than an enforced one.
Yeah, and it might be, if it was pre-planned, then fair enough. You've got Martin, Hadley, Batchelor, 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏, all vying for those back row spots. So to be able to get meaningful game time into them all, rest and recuperate, without being at 100% all the time, I guess that can only help in the long run with one eye on sort of next week. But in the heat of the moment, I don't think tactically we've ever seen it where 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏's been removed from play.
No, and that's what I wondered, is Peters trying, because if in the grand final, for example, 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏 goes off, what do we do? Who's playing there? Who's taking on that responsibility? Who's taking on that role? I mean, it's a gamble to do it in a playoff semi-final, but ultimately, if you don't do it, you need to see how the players react and what happens next. And like you said, the fact he came then back on, maybe it was just a little bit of a window to go, if Elliot 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏, who's been absolutely pivotal as a captain, as a player, it was a real captain's knock from him. He just grinds out the hard stuff. He's not the flashiest player, but he never sets out to be that player. He's like the ultimate team player. And I just think probably Willie Peters looked at that and used it as an opportunity to go, if in the eventuality of a player getting injured like Elliot 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏, what's plan B?
Yeah, it could have been that. I mean, it could be sort of one of those conversations live in game whereby the numbers say he needs 10 minutes. Just bring him off 10 minutes, recharge for a bit, get a bit of juice in the tank, and then sort of release him back in 20 minutes to go to see the game out. We don't know. I guess we'll maybe never get to know. But it was noticeable, I think, when he did go off and when he came back on, of how steady we seemed after that. And then that's when we exerted that control. And then, like you say, pulled away with those sort of two tries that sort of really killed the game off for us, barring that last couple of minutes where they got one back on us. But yeah, I thought it was a really interesting in-game dynamic that we'd not seen before this season.
Yeah, and another player, I think, Graham, who we saw obviously interchanged, was Jarrod Waerea-Hargreaves, and I believe this was his best game in the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers. I thought it's really funny because if you look at the stats, he had an average gain of about 4 meters. But if you look at the amount of carries, the amount of tackles, and the moments that he had during the 18 minutes, he was really influential in that middle part of the pitch. He was going up against Walmsley. Obviously, two stalwarts of the game, two players who have, Walmsley, absolutely fantastic player. There's no doubt. No one in Super League can have almost a bad word to say about him because of what he's contributed to the game. Absolutely fantastic player. And it was great to see them two go up against each other. A bit similar to when Elliot 𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏 came back on the pitch in the second half, when Hargreaves came back on as well. The flow of the game just seemed to change a little bit. And it was interesting to see how well he played, because there's no doubt, and we're going to talk about the fact that he could have missed Saturday's grand final, but there's no doubt for me that was his best game this season.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was one of the best ones we've seen, and I think what I've learned about the expectation from Jarrod in terms of pulling on the shirt and playing for us, it's not him of the Roosters of 5 to 10 years ago when you sort of blockbusting. That's not what you get from him now, but you do get that air of solidity in the team. If you just watch his workload when he's on the pitch, and it might not be busting tackles and skittling people over, but in defence, if you look at the effort he makes, whether he's in the centre of the field, he slides out to one of the edges to support there and make tackles, and then he's in the net. You know, in every set, he's probably involved when he's on the pitch in at least half the tackles that are needed. So again, from a workload perspective and work ethic perspective, that level of detail that is in for there will surely have an impact somewhere further down the line. Like I say, when you've got people like Lees, Knowles, Delaney, Walmsley sort of thundering at you, you do need that air of solidity in there and to be able to contain that. Because if that gets on top of you, then quite quickly you've got, you know, their backs are able to play freely. So that work that the middles do, not just JWH, but the others in and around there, the work that they do is hard yards, and it's really, really awful to have to do, because it's hard, it's painful, and they do it very, very well. That allows then us to get on top. So it might not look flashy, it might just be grinding away tackle after tackle, but it's so important to the mechanics of what we do as a team that allows the Lewises, the Tyrone Mays, the Gillies of this world to get on and do their stuff if they don't do their ugly bits well.
Do you think Jarrod Hargreaves' biggest strength is sometimes his biggest weakness? In terms of, he wants to make every contact count. He wants to be in every tackle. He wants to be the one who's running the hardest. He wants to do everything. And so what I want to do is qualify that by saying we want that, because that's the leadership role. That's the player he is. Sometimes, though, you just feel like, why are you doing that? Just stay in your, you know, and that's sometimes, I think, where opposition supporters can, you know, point a finger at him and go, you know, almost, because if you remember at the start of the season when we signed him, everyone thought he was going to be a penalty machine. He was going to give this away. He was going to be suspended for the best part of the year, and he was, you know, and we've not seen that. You just look at some of the moments in the games, and it's like, do we need to do that? And ultimately, we don't want us, you know, some of them actions to cost us at important times, but there's no doubt that he leads that line and he sets the example, and the players around him respond to what he does. And I don't think the penalty count, to be fair, for JWH has been, you know, is not nothing that you take note of. But yeah, I just think he goes hunting sometimes. And
yeah, I think, John, to add to that, I think that's a mentality thing that he's had throughout his career. That's been his job for 20 years. And the bit where I think he's at now, and I agree with you, there's sometimes you're thinking, why are you doing that? And I think that mentality that he's got, that's programmed into him, whether he's 16 years of age or 36 years of age, he'll do exactly the same. The bit that's different now is physically, his body's different. He's maybe just a fraction of a yard slower than he was, half a yard slower. But that half a yard slower is the difference where an arm goes across the shoulders that rides up into the head, or he's not there that quick enough, and then he leaves an arm laying out, to the side, and then it looks worse than it is. And yeah, does he need to do everything like that? I think that's just in his DNA to do it. I just think that state of his career is his body's not keeping up with the speed of the game now as it would have done when he was sort of in his prime. So the attitude thing, I think we would always applaud that. The decision making of, are we going to change that attitude? This being his last game, not a chance. He's just going to go out and do exactly what JWH does. So yeah, I think there's an element of that into it. But I agree that if it was a conversation you're having with him as a coach, you'd probably just ask him to pick and choose his moments a little bit better.
Yeah. Artem Org, he went off on the 69th minute. I guess a prelude to that was the fact that Reece Martin took over kicking duties much before then. None from free for Martin, albeit the conditions weren't exactly the best, was they, for Reece Martin to put them kicks away. Artem Org goes off.
Let me throw something out there. That first half, we questioned that very first penalty when it was when Lytton got taken out and we'd opted to take the 2 from it. And it was right out on that touchline in that swirling wind, and Morg slotted it. And it was like, why is he taking that? We're sort of potentially 10 metres out here on the line with 6 tackles. Why are we taking the 2 from far out wide in these conditions? So again, strange dynamic of why wasn't Morg taking those kicks? Why did it get handed over to Martin? And he was sort of 0 from 3, I think he ended up, something like that. Yeah. So when Morg had been sort of successful in the first half. So yeah, interesting dynamic, that one as well.
Yeah, and the good news is, all reports, is that Morg is fit and he's ready to go, and he's shown, hasn't he, what an important player he is for the side. We saw Gildart going over for another try, 20 points to 12 victors, Graham, and ultimately what was a good result for the Robins. What impressed me most is probably the sort of muted celebrations. It wasn't about, you didn't see, you know, the razzmatazz that we've seen, of course, previously. It looked like a side who knew the job, what the job was. They got it done. And then it was, right, that's done. We move on. And they look a determined side at the moment.
Yeah, I think you compare that with, I appreciate it's a different scenario, but Saints, the week before against Leeds, there was lots of that razzmatazz afterwards. I guess that was the nature of the victory, so I can't deny them that opportunity. But again, that was because they'd not been in that situation for a long while, I guess, and it meant a lot to them to progress through the playoffs. But this is, like you say, this is sort of business as usual now. We're getting used to these big games and being able to navigate our way through and come out on top in these big games. So I think you're quite right there, John, in the fact of there was a job to be done on Saturday. We did it. We move on.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I think ultimately, you can look at the stats to see where the game was won. Rovers had a 90% completion rate. Rovers had 28 plays of the ball in St Helens 20. St Helens had 2 in ours. St Helens missed 50 tackles. We missed 35. And sometimes stats, they're not always the best to look at in terms of pinpointing how a victory was gained. But I think it's quite compelling when you look at I think Saints had a completion rate of 68% or something like that. So when you look at that, you go, look, that's how you strangle a team. That's how you ultimately gain a victory. So it was really interesting. It was a great night. The weather wasn't the best whenever it is in East Hull. Even on the sunniest day, there's always a breeze, there's a wind. But yeah, it was job done. And of course, now we move to Old Trafford and the grand final against the Wigan Warriors. Before we talk about that game and we talk about some of the repercussions and what came out with that St Helens victory, I caught with Steve Till for the final Robins Revisited of 2025. Steve, welcome to the Robin Pod. You join us for the final Robins Revisited of 2025. Something a little bit different, though, this time, isn't it? Of course, previously, we've looked back at games against our opposition and some of them big games that we played against them. This time, though, we're going to look back at a famous Rovers victory.
Yeah, we're in the grand final on Saturday, and I'm going to take us back to where it all began for Super League, when we won the National Rail Grand Final in 2006 when we played the Widnes Vikings. And Widnes were frightened to death of us then because they brought in some big guns. They brought in O'Connor and they brought in Brian McDermott and Mick Cassidy. They were all playing for Widnes then. They were desperate to get into Super League. But boy, did we show them there was no way. There was no way we were going to lose that match at Warrington. I think there was about 12,000 people there. I think we packed Warrington and the atmosphere was electric. There were people there were Rovers fans dressed in drag. There were banners everywhere, and there were, the total event was electric, and of course, Rovers won it 29-16, but not without a fight in the second. The first half, Rovers were absolutely fantastic. The Rovers team had there are many members of that Rovers team. Some people forget the names, but do you remember Tommy Gallagher playing loose forward? Leroy
Well, I'll tell
Rivette
you
on
what,
the
Steve,
wing.
I've got the lineup here. I've actually got the lineup.
See if I
We
can
had
remember it. Benny was at fullback.
yeah,
Leroy Rivette on the wing.
yeah,
John Steele and Gareth Morton, who kicked a lot of goals that day, and Byron Ford,
yeah,
who crossed for a try. John Steele got 2 tries. And then the half-backs were Scotty and James Webster, and I think the number 8 forward was McCarley, Benny
yeah,
Fisher.
yeah,
Then you had David Tangatatua.
yeah,
Michael Smith was one of the second rowers.
yeah.
And didn't Jason Netherton play second row? Was he on the bench?
No, Morrison and Neverton was on the bench.
Oh, Ian Morrison. Who can forget Ian Morrison? Yeah, Ian Morrison was a superb player. I actually met him in Australia for the first time when he played for Scotland in the World Cup in 2008, and a fantastic guy. But and as I say, Tommy Gallagher at loose forward, tremendous team. And Justin, it was his first season as coach or second season as coach, and he went on to become the youngest coach in the Super League. He was just 31, but I think the fans, the whole thing was a joyous affair, and let's hope we can replicate that on Saturday. But there was some terrific rugby played, but also, when you think JWH got a 3-match ban originally on this week for what was an innocuous tackle, McDermott and O'Connor were there to knock Rovers players' heads off. And there's a YouTube a thing on YouTube called Rugby League Raw, and it's about 20 minutes, and it's all about that final. And there was one point where I think O'Connor tried to decapitate Scotty Morrell, got pulled up by Phil Bentham for it. There was just a penalty. There was no yellow cards or anything. And O'Connor says to the referee Bentham, "Well, can we use the elbows instead?" I mean, it was brutal. But I remember Justin saying after the match, that first half was we were leading 22-6 at half time, and that first half was probably the best he'd seen from Rovers under his tenure. But it was a great day, fantastic celebrations all the way home, celebrating when we got home. Our platform 1, I think, stayed open all night, and so that set us on the road to Super League. Okay, we've had a few bumps and what have you in between then and now, but I have a sneaking feeling we might be celebrating on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's a remarkable result as well, Steve, which capped a fantastic season. They only tasted defeat 4 times during the course of 2006. And that was, the first time that Rovers had tasted success for a long time. And it also featured the Challenge Cup semi-final that season as well.
Yeah, we got. I think I don't really talk about that too much, but I think the semi-final, the quarter-final was the highlight of that Challenge Cup run when we beat Warrington at home, wasn't it? And again, moments of celebration. We're never going to do any good against St Helens, and I think John Wilkins scored for St Helens in that semi-final, and he didn't really want to celebrate,
Yeah. Well, Steve, it's the final Robin Revisited of the season. Thank you so much for your contribution. I know so many people have mentioned to me about how much they enjoy it. Of course, you've had the pleasure of meeting some of your supporters and fans in service stations and
your supporters
throughout the course of the season. So your contributions are absolutely fantastic. Let's hope we're toasting a victory come Saturday evening, because it's another remarkable season for the Robins. Thank you so much for sharing your memories and your thoughts of games gone by. And like I said, fingers crossed for Saturday.
It's been a pleasure, and if the man above allows us to carry on for next season, I'll be happy to do it again. But anyway, it's been great. Like you said, there's been people talking about it, and it just brings back some memories for both old and young. You know, some great players we've had in the past, and some not with us now. And let's hope on Saturday we can treat them all to a sparkling display.
Graham, great memories from Steve Till there, of course, that 2006 final was a momentous occasion. Many people listening and watching the Robin Pod will remember that. There's a famous story, of course, isn't there, from Ben Cockayne about him and Scott Morrell celebrating on King Billy statue. If you've listened to the Scott Morrell Heritage Robin Pod, then you'll be able to hear all about it. We look forward now, though, Graham, to a Super League Grand Final, and I thought it was really important that, I reflect and think it's really important that Steve Till brought up that 2006, because if you look back to there, to what, I mean, we're nearly verging on 20 years ago, the transformation. We've talked about the transformation of the club over the last, 4 years, especially since the appointment of Paul Lakin and, of course, Willie Peters. Before we talk about Willie Peters and the accolades that he's enjoyed last night, as we record this Robin Pod, I just want to talk about the suspension or potential suspension that 𝗬𝗏𝗏 that would have faced, which would have ruled him out of the Super League Grand Final on Saturday, which would have been his final game in rugby league. It's really interesting that he got a Grade C charge. It's now then been rescinded after going to a tribunal. Neil Hudgell working his magic once again. I saw on social media, and I think it was from Aaron Bauer, who was a rugby league journalist. He asked Michael Lewis whether he was worried about whether JWH would play in the grand final. And I'm sure it was something like, "Don't worry, Neil Hudgell's at the wheel," kind of thing. And it's almost that reassuring presence, isn't it? It's now come to light that ban has been rescinded because of the mitigating circumstances that have presented themselves, which include the fact that the match officials on the night attended the tribunal to state that they felt that their on-field decision was correct, and they still feel, even after review, that the call they made at the time, which of course meant JWH didn't go off the pitch, he wasn't yellow carded, he didn't get a penalty given against him, was the correct call. The Robins have also presented evidence to suggest that St Helens can't prove when that HIA occurred, because they're saying that it wasn't the contact from JWH that caused a concussion and the failed HIA. It could have been from previous tackles where he's took some big knocks. It does, though, Graham, as good as it is a result for us, it's a good result for 𝗬𝗏𝗏 because we've got one of the game's great players being able to bow out on one of the biggest stages. It does make a mockery, though, of the disciplinary process in terms of the charge and how we've got to this point.
Yeah, and I think for most fans, that is one area of the game that needs absolutely tidying up. There's so much inconsistency with what players are issued with for minor misdemeanors, what we would see as could potentially result in missing the big games at the end of the season, as we saw with Jared there. But even the system itself of the point system, you could accrue and be just under that threshold of points from game 1 or 2 or 3 in the season, be absolutely squeaky clean for the next 6 months, and then in the semi-final breach that threshold and therefore miss the final. And there's sort of no way of resetting that for almost good behaviour, if you like, during the season. And you've always got that noose over you for the rest of the season. So people like Jez Litton hung around with that for a good few weeks now, where they're just dangling under that threshold. And one indiscretion. Look, you can control yourself in the way you act and that, but sometimes the way that people are penalised and therefore receive penalty points via the disciplinary process, some of it is accidental. So you're getting players now sin binned because a player has slipped in front of them and their head has gone into the defending player's body, shoulder, whatever, and he's had a split second to react to the player falling. Yes, there's contact with the head, but it's an accident. Accidents happen in a contact sport like rugby, so not everything is predetermined and warrants a ban. So I think the whole system that we've got in place needs looking at. And again, we could sit and talk around this all day and all night, Jono. We wouldn't solve it. It needs other people to do that. But I just think the way that it's been implemented, and players are, sometimes quite rightly missing out for indiscretions, but some of the ones whereby it's minor and they're copping, decent numbers of penalty points for what many would call a part of the game. Now, I'm all for player welfare and supporting that. Absolutely, that goes without saying. But there has to be an acceptance that in a contact sport there will be contact, and sometimes it will inadvertently be accidental contact, but it will be with the head, and there will be these occasions where it happens. We need to be able to separate those from those that are predetermined, that do warrant those bans and sort of removing from the game as an action. But you cannot minimise and mitigate against it completely, given the nature of the sport.
No, and look as well, Graham. Let's the punishment meted out to 𝗪𝗯𝗪 was a consequence of the injury Benison suffered. So ultimately, if he hadn't filled HIA, I don't think there'd have been a case. Which is, you're in dangerous territory, aren't you, when you're suspending, punishing players based on the outcome of contact, not the initial contact. Because rugby league, rugby union, contact sport, whatever it is, the tough sports, there is always going to be an element of risk, and punishing players for an injury, I think, goes against the spirit of the game, because the spirit of the game is about players going hard, players playing hard, and there's an acceptance that there is a risk of injury. And if you get injured as a result of fair contact, that's the game.
Yeah,
we shouldn't be punishing players for then because someone's injured because of that.
100%. I think what we've seen creeping into the game as well, John, I'm not going to call it cheating. Some will, but I'm not going to call it cheating. But you see players staying down, not being able to play the ball, so that it forces the referee to stop the game, which then forces the video ref to get involved and have a look at it. And sometimes there's occasions where it's deemed nothing to do, move along, but sometimes it brings up the actual contact. So it's a real sort of dangerous game we're in at the minute, whereby that it's been rife in football, the play acting and that, to get people carded or sent off. I'm not suggesting that that's what players are doing here, but there's an element here of gamesmanship, I think, on some of these occasions where a player does stay down to seek that advantage for their team, whether it's by gaining a penalty or under review, a player gets a sin bin rightly or wrongly. So I think we've got to be mindful of that, because that has only crept into the game over the last couple of 3 years. And I think if you ask every professional playing the sport, yes, they want to play it fairly and play it hard, and accept that there will be those occasions, like you say, where in a contact sport there is a risk of injury every single time you take the field, and you can only do so much for yourself to mitigate against it. And you don't go out deliberately to injure players, but it is a part of the game that you have to accept can happen, in the same way that you can pull a hamstring or you can get soft tissue injuries, etc. It's just part of a physical game that you have to accept that can happen.
Yeah. What do you make of referees attending, in effect, appeals? And do you think that's a dangerous precedent to set? Because ultimately they've had a massive influence on the fact, and this is me taking my Rovers tinted tinted spectacles off and just looking at the game as a whole. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, on this occasion, it's worked for us, so I accept that has a part to play in it. Now, if in future, next season, for example, week 1, we get a situation where we've got no penalty given on field, but a player fails HIA, then does this set a precedent for that match official to be called in as a witness?
It's going to happen every time now.
Every single time, and there's a precedent.
I suppose the danger is, Graham, it could go your other way. It could go the other way as well, where the match official goes.
Correct. The referees, on the whole, I think, do a good job in getting things right most of the time. Was a pass forward? What was it? A penalty. You can argue the toss. Some of those are subjective, but I think on the whole, they get most of those decisions correct, and they would, proven wrong on certain captains' challenges, etc. But again, the vast majority, I think, of that exercise has proven that the referees a lot of the time do get things right. So I think this is again a dangerous precedent that has been set of doing this, and however it's come about, because theoretically every Tuesday night you're going to need the referees on standby to be available to attend RFL disciplinary hearings, and then it becomes a farcical event to sort of have the referees. They've made a call on field, and between him and the video ref, they've deemed that there's no further action. And we're taking the fact that the player is injured on the back of it as evidence to punish somebody. And again, the circumstances around that could have, that incident could have occurred in the first minute and not transpired till minute 25 or whatever it was that it came out in the actual game. We're punishing people because people get injured. And if it is a detriment to the team losing that player, it obviously is. But if it's an accident, or if it's something that has just happened because we have to accept that parts of the game and across the course of the season, look, these things usually even themselves out, and we've had a few go against us and a few go for us. On this occasion, it's gone for us. It could have gone the other way completely, and we'd have lost 3 games, and we would have never seen Hargreaves wearing the red and white again for us, and we'd have had to accept that. But the fact that it's gone our way this time is great for us, but I just worry about now what's the next steps when the next season comes along and we get similar incidents where players are failing HIAs that isn't actioned on field and deemed as penalty. We are then going to revert back to this because we've set ourselves a dangerous precedent here.
Yeah, right. Well, he's playing. That's the main thing. He's going to be in that squad. He's going to have a final swan song. And we're going to see what he does on Saturday night. Let's look ahead to Saturday night. No, I'll tell you what, before we look ahead to Saturday night, let's laud our leader, our talisman, which is, of course, our Hull Kingston Rovers head coach, Willie Peters. He has been named the head coach of the year, the Super League head coach of the year for the 2nd season in a row. He's also been named as assistant coach for Australia, ahead of the Ashes series against England, which many of us are very much looking forward to, which in itself is a huge accolade for Willie Peters, because if you look at his career from coaching under 16 rugby league in Australia at club level, his ascent to being assistant coach at NRL level, and now where he's now Super League head coach. And the fact of what he's achieved in such a short period of time with the Robins, it's great to see him getting his just rewards, because he is absolutely fantastic at the job he does. And do you know what? It's just great to see Willie Peters' name in the headlines, but he's probably the first one who don't want his name in there, because his job's all about just what he does.
Yeah, 100%, and he'll accept the award and be gracious about it, I'm sure. But he'll pay credit to a lot of other people that help him achieve that: the players, the coaching staff, the backroom staff, the whole club itself, the structure that's in and around him that helps him to be able to do what he does. And I think, it wasn't as if he inherited a habitually winning team. When he came in, we were favourites for relegation, I believe, at that particular time. And he came in and has absolutely transformed the whole backroom ethos, the work ethic of the players. He's now got his fingerprints all over the squad. He hasn't inherited a squad that wasn't his. So now we're sort of seeing the fruits of those labour. I think with, last season around Matt Peake doing what Wigan did last season to sort of come from nowhere to sort of overturn that. Again, to back it up this season with a consistent year as well for us and take us on even further. You look at other coaches, you're thinking, where could the award have gone? You look at what Wakefield have done since they came up, similar to our journey of going back down to come back up stronger, and you look at them as being in the playoffs at the end of the season. You look at the job Brad Arthur's done at Leeds as well, and almost transformed them as a side that's now competing in the top six regularly and on the up. Obviously, Matt Peake at Wigan, Adrian Lamb again is like us at Lee Leopards. They're putting together a strong squad, transforming the club behind the scenes about how they're now consistently in that top six, consistently in these semi-finals, and obviously the final they won against us a couple of years back. So again, I think there's a pool there of top quality coaches, and for Peters to gain that accolade at the end of this season, obviously the silverware helps with it, but I think again is just testament to the amount of hard work that he and all the team behind the scenes put into to make him what he is.
Yeah, and it's the transformational impact that he's had on the club, the professionalism, the unity. It's not the connection between the supporters and the players and the coaching group and the club is, for me during my time supporting the Robins, is the best it's ever been. And it's unique as well because this is at a time when the players and staff, for example, are at the greatest demand. Everybody wants a piece of them because they're delivering success, and not only are they delivering success, they're doing it in a way which is really representative of the culture, the community of East Hull, and it is shades of the 80s and our success back then, where there was a real united front. If you created a triangle now, players, supporters, staff. That is the triangle, and at the moment we are all as one. And Willie Peters has been absolutely integral into driving that culture, creating that culture. And I think if you speak to the players, I think they'll say he's one of the hardest coaches they've ever worked with, but he's probably also the most understanding, the most welcoming, the most appreciative of what they do, and not only what they do on the rugby field and what they do on the training paddock, but what they need to do off the field, what their family situation is. And there's a reason why we're able to sign the players that we are. And there's a reason why players want to come to Hull Kingston Rovers. And I fully believe Willie Peters is the focal point of that. And this success that we're enjoying at the moment, which we hope come Saturday night will be crowned with a treble, Willie Peters has absolutely transformed this club of the recent past. Building blocks were put in place before he came, but I tell you what, he's absolutely built on them. And not only has he done it, he's done it at a rapid pace. So it's great to see him getting the recognition that he deserves. And I think his leadership, it's sort of almost reignited the spirit of East Hull, the spirit of Hull Kingston Rovers, the supporter base. And regardless of what happens on Saturday night, he will go down as a great, because for what he's done and the feeling that he's put into people and just the absolute pleasure he's given to us as Hull Kingston Rovers supporters will not be forgotten ever. So we just hope that this accolade he's received in terms of being the Super League head coach for the second season in a row is then crowned with a grand final victory. And of course, he's going to become our nemesis when he's the Australian assistant head coach with his insight. But it's what a guy, what a coach. I think just what a fantastic human being Willie Peters is.
Yeah, it might not be big in stature, but the impact that is made within the club, as you've quite rightly alluded to there, John, it is huge. And for the majority of us, look, we're interested in what goes on the field, and there's huge amounts of stuff going on behind the scenes at the club, and again, he's all over the detail of that. But you look at the signings and the squad that he's pulled together, and you would argue that whilst he's brought in good players, working under him and his stewardship, he's made them even better players. And that, to me, is a testament of a good coach, to make good players better, or average players good players, whichever way you want to see it. And that blueprint that we've got now, whilst it will always be subject to tweaks and fluctuations of what's going on, we shouldn't lose sight of that blueprint now, whoever comes in, player-wise or coaching staff-wise, for the future. Has now created an identity for us as a club of how we play, who we are, what we're all about, how we play. That, for me, should be sort of embedded into his successes, whenever that may be, in coming years. Hopefully not for a long while, but that ethos that has been created now, and I think the backing that he's got from the club with those key long-term signings of some of our key players within that, long may that ethos continue.
Yeah, and there's no doubt whatsoever, Graham, that he is a figurehead of the club. He's got his finger involved in every single pie. He's involved in every part of the club. And I think, do you know what, to be really successful, I think a club needs that type of coach, manager, whatever sport it is. I genuinely think the best teams are the ones who've got a manager or coach who are just so important to the club that they're bigger than just a team. There's no doubt Willie Peters will be involved in so many different areas of the side of the club, and I think that's what ultimately has led to this point. So yeah, let's come on to Saturday, Graham. Of course, in the build-up to a grand final, the team news is at a premium. Artem Org, as we recall this, is fit. He's going to be playing. Mickey McAlorum was the big news prior to the semi-final against St Helens. He didn't feature. He got interviewed on the pitch, which was really interesting afterwards, because it was his final chance to go on the hallowed turf at Craven Park. All things point to him playing on Saturday. And if you go back to the Challenge Cup lineup, apart from Oliver Gildart, I'm expecting pretty much the same line. I fully expect Mickey McAlorum to play. I think he's almost was saved from the semi-final to make sure that he could play in the final. Does leave a few question marks over the team selection because, of course, against St Helens, we saw Jack Broadbent on the bench. If you're bringing Mickey McAlorum into the setup, as we mentioned on the Robin Pod last week, that means that potentially Jez Litton drops to the bench, and that he becomes the utility player, which will be a great shame for Jack Broadbent if that happens, because for me, he's been up there as one of the best players this season.
Yeah, I think he's proved consistent over the course of the regular season. Now, I think with the back end of the season and Gildart's return, I think we've seen where Peters' preferences lie in that area. So again, it's where does Broadbent fit? Now, there's an interchange on Saturday. Is there a space for Litton? If that's the way we're going to go with Litton as an interchange, is there a space for Litton and Broadbent? That seems very light in terms of figures that we've got on the bench, given that we've got usually 2 or 3 prop stroke back rows in there as well usually. So again, I guess it depends on looking at the opposition. What we know, I think, predictably how we're going to line up. So we need to be able to manage that. Does having Broadbent provide us cover? Yes, it does. But does it provide us cover in the right areas where we might need it? So again, all the decisions that need to be made by the coaching staff during this week through practice, discussion, etc. And I'm sure we've said it umpteen times this season, John, and we trust in the coaching staff and trust in Willie Peters' decision-making process. Whatever 17/18 are put on that team sheet on Saturday, we believe that we back that, because that's what the coaching staff have seen. And we'll know pretty soon what the squad's going to look like. Come as we record this on Wednesday, we'll know on Thursday what the squad's going to look like, the 21, and see if there were any glaring omissions there from a fitness perspective. But like you, I think there'll be a familiar feel to the the main 17, barring one or two sort of tweaks decision-wise on interchanges.
Yeah, and we talked about prior to recording this about there's a little bit of a different feeling this time around in terms of heading to a grand final. Almost that we've had a fantastic season, of course, and it's crazy to say that we're recording this on the back of a double and in terms of winning the Challenge Cup and the league leaders. The grand final, of course, is up next. It's a bit of a different feeling going into this one, but there's no doubt we've seen the numbers. They're expecting one of the biggest grand final crowds in of the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. There's a lot of eyes on this. There's a lot of eyes on this from down under as well because of Jared Hargreaves and his final game. It's got all the makings of a huge game. Of course it has. It's the biggest game in Super League. But do you know what? I'm enjoying the fact that there's better expectation on this side now. We're not the plucky underdogs. We're not just going there for a day out. We're going to win, and I get that feeling from the players. It's what the players have said and how they're reacting to victories and what they're talking about. That's where I get my confidence from and my feeling from. And I think we should go. We're going toe to toe with Wigan. We're not going to try and upset a side. We deserve our place at the top table. Willie Peters and the players have earned it. As supporters through backing this side over how many years, we deserve it. And that's why for me, it's not David versus Goliath. This is David versus David. This is toe to toe.
Yeah, 100%, John. I think, again, even as a time-served fan of many, many years, on Saturday I turned up to the game very calm and confident, not arrogant and an expectation of a win. I was expecting us to win, but there's always that nervousness when we've had a week off of how we'll turn up, and that first 40 minutes of performance and energy, that gave me the confidence to believe I was right in my own self-confidence. And look, before Wembley on that Saturday at 1 o'clock before we kicked off, I think quite a few fans were nervous as anything before that, and the relief that came out at 5 p.m. when the final hooter went was immeasurable. But now I've grown this season into trusting process, trusting our players, trusting the coaching staff, etc. So I turned up on Saturday confident, and that transpired after 80 minutes. So that again fills me with confidence for Saturday coming up. You're quite right there. I don't think we should fear Wigan. Have they got threats? Yes, of course they have. And we all know where they can come from. But again, as Peters has said in umpteen press conferences, we've got to worry about what 𝗀𝗂𝗧 can do and get that right, and let Wigan worry about us and try and nullify them as best as we can. So that being able to sit at that top table has been earned as a club, as a team, as a set of fans, and we need to embrace that opportunity that is presented to us. We aren't going in there and let's just have a nice day out and that's our end goal. We're now sort of going confident that look, we can compete with the clean sweep team from last season. We can challenge them on all fronts, and we've proved that with the 2 bits of silverware that we've acquired all season. So I think we should turn up on Saturday with that air of confidence, but not the arrogance, because Wigan are a very, very good team, don't forget, and they know what this game is all about. They prepare themselves and they aim to peak for this game pretty much every season, definitely for the last 3 seasons anyway, but in and around that 5-10 year period, they've been knocking around this end of season games pretty much every year. So they're tried and trusted in this. And the interesting dynamic for me on this part, it's almost a separate competition, this grand final now, and it's billed as the biggest game and the show, but actually it's a 3-game maximum competition. You earn the right through your regular season to enter the competition, and then depending on the league, you could just win 2 games and win the whole lot. Now, again, just an interesting stat that I picked up on as a side issue here, John. You look at the actual number of points needed to get into the top 6 this year. I think it was only something like 14 wins, 28 points would have got you into the top 6. Now, we won 22 games, whatever it was, but after 14 wins, you could have qualified for the top 6. You then reset and enter a new competition. If you could win 3 more games, you've won the whole lot. You've won the grand final, the biggest, forget the 27 rounds that have gone on and the credibility that's given to the League Leaders' Shield. I don't think is anywhere near as high as it is for the Super League grand final. And it's almost deemed as the least respected trophy to win the League Leaders' Shield, but it's the hardest one because it's consistency over 27 weeks.
Hey, wait until next season when they go to 14 teams and an 18 playoff.
There you go, and you could go through that season, just get over a 50% win ratio record, be in the top 6, and then peak for those 3 games, and like you say, win the whole lot and all the adulation and credibility that goes with it. So I do think there's an imbalance from a perception of the 3 competitions that we can legitimately target each year as rugby clubs. And I think there's that huge imbalance of importance placed on this mini tournament at the end of the season.
It is nice to go to Old Trafford, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But interestingly, Rovers have changed their preparations ahead of the game on Saturday. So last year, what they didn't do was visit Old Trafford the day before and get a feel of the place. This year, they are doing that, and I think Willie Peters has admitted they've learned a lot from the Challenge Cup final success this season, how they went about business. And I'm thinking and hearing that they're looking to replicate a lot of what they did. So hopefully that stands them in good stead. I mean, if you look at a lot of the stats about, because obviously Rovers are the home team by finishing first, and the away team, their record of successes, and there's a lot of things that go in favour of the inverted commas home side. So, hey, look, it's gonna boil down to what happens. In 80 minutes of rugby league. Hopefully it's 80 minutes in the golden point. I don't know if my heart will be able to take a golden point, but there's no doubt it's going to come down to something that happens during that 80 minutes. If you look at the Wigan team, Graham, I mean, we could talk about them. We know the threat players, don't we? It's clear to see Bevan French, 𝗪𝗱𝗓𝗄𝗏, strike players. We saw it in last season's grand final. If you give them a sniff, the job for the Robins is just to execute their game plan. And if they come up with something that is absolutely brilliant, then sometimes you hold your hands up and go, that's sport. But I'm in full belief that the Robins will have learnt their lesson from last season. They've learnt it during the course of this season. Ultimately, that's what led to a Challenge Cup final victory at Wembley. And I'm going to Old Trafford confident that this side's not there to compete. This side's there to win.
Yeah, I fully agree. And like you say, you can't legislate for those moments of brilliance. You can do all the prep and planning you want to, but sometimes you just got to hold your hands up and say, we were beaten by a good move or a one-off play. We saw that 12 months ago. But again, we know where the threats are. We need to going back to our previous discussion points, John, around that 80-minute performance, we can't afford to switch off in concentration for a minute during that 80 minutes, because it only takes somebody to leave half a yard gap between players too much, or switch off, miss a tackle, that French is away, Field is away, and then it's all on after that. So I think that will be drilled in around that concentration element of it. Even under heavy fatigue, we've still got to be able to do that focus. The leaders on the pitch need to sort of play their part as well. But hopefully we can, still have the opportunity, rather than worrying too much about what they're going to do, be able to assert ourselves in the game and give Wigan some worries about us and our performance. And we showed we can do that when we went to their place, a few weeks before the end of the regular season and got a positive result there. So it can be done. We know that. We've just now got to repeat that on Saturday night. Yeah,
and that leads us to question time, Graham. We're going to fire through these because we spoke about much of these questions, or answered these questions already. Pat O'Connor on Facebook, he says, on Saturday, I'm praying that we're a little bit more expansive and not just the up the jumper rugby. It takes a moment or two of magic. Would you start Jack Broadbent? Well, I don't even think he's going to be in the squad. If he is, he's fully deserving of that place because he's an absolutely fantastic player. We mentioned it with Graham about the expansive rugby.
I think by all accounts conditions are going to be dry for once at Old Trafford in October. So that does promote the opportunity of expansive play, but I don't think that's been in the big games, I don't think that's been our mantra. Go back to Wembley, we kept everything tight. Appreciate weather conditions were not the best, but I think we earn the right to play expansive, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't execute when we have opportunities, and we should be brave, because I thought that was where 12 months ago, I thought we were, dare I say, lacking in those moments of being brave and playing those big moments when we were in their 20, we had the opportunities, we didn't quite execute them. So I think that there's a time and a place for that, and we have to trust the players on the field to make those calls of when the time is to make those expansive movements, because through the middle, I think we're going to very, very strong. So we've got to shift it at some point, and then it's can we do that quick enough to create those overloads and ultimately get people on the outside of shoulders and through the lines. Yeah,
James McCracken, he says, do you know who's doing coaches, the Robins versus Brisbane game? Well, hey, if we get there, the university to get in touch with his 𝗪𝗓𝗄𝗏. Gary Lee, of course, from the Robin Pod, he says, what's your favourite cheese? Graham, one-word answer, are you a Kraft cheese slice kind of guy or a nice creamy Stilton type of person?
Hate the stuff.
Sean Michael, he says, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, Sean, because I'm going on your coach to the grand final, as me and my family are. He says, and this is maybe, this could be a man in the know here. He says, my observation question, Rose have been extremely astute in the transfer market with innovative swaps of players, etc. in the Peters era. I feel there's still a rabbit to be pulled out of the hat for next season's recruitment, maybe a delusion player wanting more game time, but get the feeling our business isn't complete. Thoughts? Well,
yeah, I think
that's an alluding statement and question.
Yeah, I think officially the sort of messages you get are, well, we're pretty much there or thereabouts with recruitment, but I think if an opportunity presented itself that fitted with our squad dynamic, that fitted with the mantra of who we are and what we're all about, I think if that opportunity came out and Peters and the staff and people behind the scenes could make it happen, if they felt it was going to be a betterment to the squad, I think they'd try and find a way to do that. So I'd probably never say never on those sorts of things.
Yeah, and very quickly, and it's a great question to finish on. 𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗏 on Instagram, he says, glad to see, not a question, but glad to see both Mickey McIlroy, fingers crossed, and Jared Waugh-Hargreaves getting the send-off their careers deserve.
Here, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic occasion. Anytime you get to go see a game at Old Trafford, it's amazing. Yeah, it's time for the big dance, isn't it? If you look at it, it's been a remarkable journey from the early round to the unforgettable semi-final victory over St Helens. And now we are just final steps away from Old Trafford as Hull Kingston Rovers chase a moment that would go down in club history. The chance to complete the treble and complete an extraordinary season in red and white. Our thanks to Steve Till for joining us on the Robin for the final Robins Revisited. Of course, thank you to you, Graham, for joining us for the Robin Pod. Of course, we will be back next week with all the reaction to the grand final. But for now, just make sure, live, love, laugh and be happy.
Kingston Rovers fight as one for every goal and try. Since '85 we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with each toe grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount They offer 𝗀𝗂𝗽𝗏𝗏 Rovers Forever members.